two people. Same salary, same city, same age. 10 years later, one has $280,000. The other has $14,000. No inheritance, no side hustle, no lucky trade. The only difference? Which money type they were, and whether they knew it. Here's what nobody tells you. Your money type isn't a personality quirk. It's a financial destination. And most people spend their entire 30s following advice that was written for a completely different type than theirs. So let me ask you one thing before we go any further. When your paycheck hits, what actually happens next? Do you immediately start moving money, paying things, transferring, like there's a system to run? Do you feel a wave of relief and start mentally spending it before you've checked the balance? Or do you see the notification and leave it there? Because somehow not knowing still feels safer. Your answer just told me which trap you're in, and each trap has a different price tag. A 2025 Wealth Enhancement Survey of 2,000 U.S. adults found that 44% of Americans avoided checking a financial account in the past year, not because they were busy, but because checking felt too stressful. Nearly half the country is making financial decisions while actively avoiding their finances. That's not a budgeting problem. That's a personality problem. And personality problems have different math than budgeting problems. In this video, the exact dollar amount each type loses without knowing it. The one fix that works for your type and actively makes things worse for a different type. And why the most financially educated person in this story often ends up with the least. The math doesn't lie. People do. I'm gonna be honest with you about something before we get into the math. I used to be a classic avoider. Not because I didn't care, because I cared too much and had no idea what to do about it. So I just didn't look. Every month there was this low-grade dread. Something's wrong, I can feel it, but as long as I didn't confirm it, it wasn't technically real. Turns out that strategy has a price tag. We'll get to that number. Now, I want you to pick your type. But here's the thing. Most people pick wrong the first time. They pick the type they wish they were, not the one their bank statement would confirm. And here's what really messes with people. The spender and the hoarder aren't opposites. They're the same fear, going in different directions. The spender escapes anxiety by spending. The hoarder escapes anxiety by clutching. Both are anxiety management systems. Money is just the tool. Which means giving a spender a savings account and a hoarder a credit card would fix exactly nothing, because the tool was never the problem. The feeling was. 3 types. Pick one. Not the aspirational one. The spender. The spender spends to feel good. Not irresponsibility, because spending works. It cuts stress. It creates a sense of forward motion. The dopamine is immediate and real. The spender is usually the most generous person in the room, picks up the tab, buys the gift, upgrades the experience. Feels guilty about it roughly 2 days later when they check what's left. The core problem isn't the amount, it's the trigger. Research on emotional spending shows spenders are responding to internal states: stress, boredom, celebration, social pressure. A 2025 Wealth Enhancement Survey found 39% of people who feel stressed or anxious said they're likely to spend money to feel better. 1 in 3. The budget isn't the issue, because the budget was never the point. The feeling is the point. The hoarder. The hoarder saves to feel safe, not discipline, because spending feels dangerous. Every purchase is a small threat. Every dollar that leaves is a dollar that can't protect them anymore.
The hoarder has money, sometimes a lot, but it's sitting in a savings account at 0.5%, while inflation does what inflation does.
And they know this. They've read about index funds, they understand the math, they just can't move the money because investing feels like handing over control. And control is the only thing standing between them and the fear. Here's the math most hoarders have never actually run. Inflation has averaged roughly 3% per year over long periods. At that rate, $10,000 in a low-yield savings account for 20 years has the purchasing power of about $5,500 today. No bad investment, no fraud, no crisis, just $4,500 gone, quietly, safely, while the number in the account kept going up. The security they were protecting was shrinking the whole time. The avoider. The avoider doesn't overspend. They don't hoard. They just don't engage. Bills get paid eventually. Accounts exist. The 401k is set up from the onboarding paperwork 2 years ago and hasn't been touched since. They'll deal with it later, when things calm down, when there's more money, when the timing is better. The timing is never better. Here's what makes the avoider the most expensive type over time. The spender and the hoarder are both doing something, spending or saving. Their mistakes are active, which means they're visible enough to eventually trigger a correction. The avoider's mistakes are invisible. A 2022 Vanguard study found employees who never reviewed their 401k after initial enrollment underperformed active reviewers by 1.5% per year on average. On a $100,000 portfolio over 20 years, 1.5% per year is $80,000. Not from a bad decision, from no decision. The avoider doesn't feel like they're losing money. They're just not watching it disappear. Same person, same income. Age 32, $65,000 a year. $800 a month left after fixed expenses. 15 years later. The spender used that $800 for stress relief and social life, restaurants, experiences, things that felt important. Positive net worth, limited savings. The money moved with intention, mostly. It just never accumulated. The hoarder kept the $800 in savings at 1%. $144,000 in the account feels secure. But $144,000 at 1% versus $144,000 invested at 8% is not a small gap. The invested version is $277,000. The hoarder has $133,000 in invisible opportunity cost sitting right there in the account. The avoider set up a small 401k contribution during onboarding, never reviewed the allocation, missed several years of employer match adjustments, and let the default fund sit in a cash equivalent. Roughly $40,000. Not because of bad decisions, because of no decisions. Same income, same 15 years, 3 different math problems. The spender's real problem? What something costs versus what it's worth. The spender doesn't have a money problem. They have a timing problem. Spending $200 when you're stressed costs $200, plus whatever that $200 would have become. At 8% over 20 years, that's $932. You paid $200 for a weekend of relief. The actual price was $932, paid in slow installments called opportunity cost. The spender's fix isn't a budget, it's a pause. A 24 to 48-hour waiting period eliminates most emotional purchases. Not because the person becomes more disciplined, because the feeling that triggered the purchase physically passes. Cortisol drops, dopamine anticipation fades. The item is still there. The need for it just isn't. You were never buying the thing. You were buying relief from the feeling. And the feeling has a half-life of about 36 hours. The hoarder's real problem? Safety that isn't safe. The hoarder's money feels safe. The number only goes up. But the number only goes up isn't the same as the money is growing. The number goes up, purchasing power goes down. The gap between what the money could be doing and what it's doing widens every year, silently. $50,000 in a savings account at 1% for 20 years becomes $61,000. The same $50,000 in a diversified index fund at 8% becomes $233,000. The hoarder didn't miss $172,000 by making a bad call. They worked to protect money that was quietly losing a race they didn't know they were running. The fear of losing money cost them $172,000. The avoider's real problem? Inaction compounds exactly like action, just backwards. The avoider doesn't think they're making decisions. They are. Every month of not reviewing the 401k allocation, decision. Every year of not adjusting the savings rate, decision. Every unclaimed employer match, because the forms seemed complicated, a decision worth hundreds of dollars. Inaction feels neutral. It isn't. The average employer 401k match is 4.5% of salary, per Vanguard's How America Invests report. An employee earning $65,000 who doesn't optimize their contribution to capture the full match is leaving $2,925 a year on the table. Over 15 years at 8% growth, that's $85,000. Not from bad investments, from not reading the enrollment paperwork carefully enough and then not going back to fix it. Here's something nobody says out loud about money types. The fix for a spender given to a hoarder makes the hoarder worse. The fix for an avoider given to a spender makes the spender worse. Most financial advice is written for one type and sold to all three. If you've ever tried something that sounded completely reasonable and felt your situation somehow get harder instead of easier, there's a real chance you were following a fix designed for someone else. Here's what works. One fix per type. Only that fix. If you're a spender, automate first. Spend what's left. The spender doesn't need to spend less. They need to spend after the important money has already moved. Automatic transfer on payday before you see the money to savings or investment. What's left is yours to spend without guilt, without tracking, without a spreadsheet. This doesn't fight the spender's nature. It reorders the sequence. Spend after saving, not save after spending. The spender who tries to save what's left at the end of the month will always find nothing left because there's always something to spend it on first. If you're a hoarder, keep the safety. Define its edges. The hoarder doesn't need to stop keeping cash. They need to define how much cash is actually enough and let everything above that do something. 3 to 6 months of expenses in a high-yield savings account. That is a real, defensible emergency fund. Anything above that isn't safety. It's opportunity cost dressed up as safety. Specific move, set a rule. Any amount above the emergency threshold moves automatically to an index fund, monthly. The hoarder keeps the control. The rule is the control. They just pre-committed to what too much cash means before the feeling of fear could override the math. Here's the failure mode that kills this for most hoarders, and it happens almost every time. They set the threshold, they create the rule, then the market drops 8% in a month, and they manually override the transfer, just until things stabilize. Temporarily pausing an automatic investment during a market dip is the opposite of what the math requires. Buying high, sitting out the low. The rule only works if the hoarder decides in advance that overriding it isn't an option. Not probably won't. Not an option. The rule has to be more trustworthy than the feeling. If you're an avoider, 1 hour, one date, every year. The avoider doesn't need a financial overhaul. They need one protected hour per year. One calendar date, birthday, January 1st, any anchor, where you log into every account, check every allocation, confirm every automatic transfer is still running, and bump the savings rate by 1%. That's it. 1 hour. Everything else stays on autopilot. The avoider's mistake is believing financial management needs constant attention. It doesn't. It needs occasional attention, done consistently. 1 hour a year, every year, beats 12 hours once and then silence. None of these problems is actually about money. The spender is managing emotion. The hoarder is managing fear. The avoider is managing overwhelm. All three are completely normal responses to something that is genuinely stressful and genuinely tied to survival. What's hard isn't the math. It's that the behavior has been running on autopilot in the dark for years. Naming it is the first thing that slows it down. People ask me which type is the worst. The honest answer, whichever one you are and don't know about. The spender who knows and automates first, fine. The hoarder who knows and defines the safety number, fine. The avoider who knows and blocks 1 hour a year, fine. The expensive version of every type is the one that stays invisible. The behavior keeps running, the math keeps accumulating. Nobody's watching. 3 things this week. 1, name your type. Not the one you want to be, the one you recognized somewhere in what I just described. Write it down. Just naming it changes how you look at the next decision you're about to make. 2, find your number. Spender, what's your automatic transfer amount starting this payday? Hoarder, what's your actual emergency fund target? And what happens to everything above it? Avoider, what date this year is your one financial hour? Put it in the calendar before you close this video. 3, tell one person what type you are. Not for advice, just out loud. The financial personality you've never named has been making decisions for you in the dark. Saying it is how you start making them yourself. If this landed, subscribe. It helps more than you know. The math doesn't lie. People do. Next, we're going somewhere uncomfortable. Your parents had money fights when you were a kid. Maybe loud ones. Maybe the quiet kind, where nobody said anything, but the whole house went tense. Either way, those fights are still running in your finances right now. I'm going to show you exactly how much they're costing you.